Thank you, Chair. And thank you everybody for staying on as long as you've done. It's been a long day. Allow me to first especially thank Mr. Ben Emerson for so passionately defending the rights of victims. I, as a mere victim and not a policy expert, could not have put it more eloquently. I am also not going to tell much about policy here today. I'm going to share with you a little bit about my personal story as the victim of a terrorist bomb attack in Jakarta, and tell you then a little bit about what we are trying to do with that experience. Before the bomb, I had been living and working for more than 5 years already in the beautiful country of Indonesia, and I had led, for a Dutch boy, a very normal life. Was very actively social, sportively, had a beautiful girlfriend, and worked as a political consultant in Jakarta, and was planning to start a family soon. However, in the morning of the 17th of July 2009, a young boy from Java named Denny Dwi Permana walked into a meeting we had with 20 of our clients with 2 bombs on his body and detonated those bombs. We were sitting on a table, and 5 of us deceased, and I was the first one on the table to survive, so I still consider myself lucky. I still remember that morning, and I want to share that with you. We were talking, starting the meeting, making some jokes, and I was about to say something when everything turned blue in front of my eyes, dark blue. I couldn't breathe. I had my mouth open, wanted to say something, but I couldn't. I saw myself falling, not falling from the chair, but in open space, and that feeling lasted for about half a minute or a minute, I can't remember. And then I woke up in the sprinklers of the hotel. They went on, and I looked around in the rubble and rumble and smoke and water and chaos, and I tried to get up, but I couldn't, because my left lower leg was already hanging loose from my body, and my right arm as well. I couldn't move both. So I put off my arm, and I shouted for help. After a minute or two, a guard of the hotel came in and carried me outside, put me on the street, where I laid for, I think, 5 to 10 minutes in agony and shouting for help. After those 10 minutes, I was brought to the hospital in Jakarta, where I lost conscience, probably because I felt more or less safe, and my survivor instinct that had carried me through until that moment told my body to let go. I was put there in a induced coma for 3 weeks. And was evacuated to Singapore, and during those three weeks, among others, my 2 legs were amputated. I was treated for severe burning wounds. I had more than 70% of my body was burned. I was treated I had almost daily surgeries for a lot of the burning wounds, but also the shrapnel that I suffered. The terrorist who built the bomb in the hotel room of the Marriott the day before they detonated the bomb thought it was a good idea to unscrew all the bolts and screws from the TV set in the hotel room and put them in the bomb to inflict major damage. Now, one of those bolts landed in my heart and is up until today still in my heart. Luckily, it was a Philips TV set, which is a Dutch brand, so I'm still 100% Dutch made, so I'm lucky there. But I woke up after 3 weeks and had two questions basically before I could speak, but I had them after I realized what had happened. The first being, why would I still want to live after so many injuries? And the second one was, why me? Luckily, I had the support of my family there and my mother, who was sitting in front of me and who I could convey my questions in hand language and whatever, sign language, was there to help me to address those questions immediately. And she said to the first one, well, Max, there's still enough to live in life or to enjoy in life. And to the first, she said, well, Max, you are not the first and not going to be the last victim of an unjust crime. And those answers provided me with the power to fight from that moment on for my recovery, which has been long ever since, and during which I have fought hard to come back and to walk on prosthetic legs. As some of you might have seen, still needs a lot of practice for me, but I'm working on it. Now, after waking up, I also immediately felt the need, even before I could speak, to meet the family of the bomber. Because in my view, the bomber, the 17-year-old Danny Dwi Permana, is also a victim of brainwashing by some very sick people. I wanted to do something. I wanted to do more than just being a victim. And I wanted to engage. I wanted to prevent a similar fate to anyone else on this planet, but I was unaware how to do it. And even though it wasn't easy for me emotionally to get involved, the prospect of prevention outweighed and still outweighs up until today the burden on me emotionally. Now, my logic for getting involved as a victim is basically as follows. The primary aim of Danny Dwi Permana and all terrorists, I think, is not to inflict pain on the direct victims that they hurt. They want to create fear and hatred among society. However, they are inflicting pain on me and on numerous other victims. And I feel that they should be confronted with that pain. Confronted after the fact, so convicted terrorists, but also try to confront potential terrorists and society at large with the pain terrorists create to victims. Now, I don't believe that an atmosphere of vengeance will be helpful, because I do feel that hatred will only create more hatred. So I strongly recommend everyone to do it through a positive and constructive dialogue. When I started learning about ways to get involved, I learned, however, that close to me there were no existing frameworks or structures for victims to get involved. And that is why we, with the International Center for Counterterrorism in The Hague, have initiated a project to build a framework for structurally involving victims in countering violent extremism. And this project, which will be initially undertaken in Indonesia, and will start in July this year, should result in a blueprint for implementation of that framework, and hopefully that blueprint can then also be used in other countries, possibly with local adaptations, of course. It is a project which is closely coordinated with the Indonesian Association of Bomb Victims, and is a cooperation project between several government states, among which the Indonesian and the Dutch government, and also a Dutch civil society, a Dutch foundation. Now, the deliverables of this project I would like to share with you is first and foremost to create a focal point for victims like myself, but also future victims, to coordinate between the efforts between the victims, the government, and civil society. In order to do this, we would need to set up a central database of existing victims, which should also then be updated if there are future victims. 1 second, please. We would need then to establish protocols for when and how to approach the victims. When I was laying in the hospital in Singapore, not being able to speak yet, that would not have been a good time to approach me. But waiting for 2-3 years is also too long, so we need protocols for that, and also for the way how. We then also need to develop protocols how to select the victims with compelling stories, because it could be counterproductive to select victims who still feel anger and hatred, to involve them in the fight. Then we also need to train and support the victims on how to best engage in the outreach efforts that such a focal point should organize and coordinate. And to really focus the outreach efforts, we should map the areas in the certain geographical countries of increased radicalization risk. So we can best identify the opportunities for the outreach efforts, such as schools, madrasas, community organizations, etc., in these areas. We should furthermore choose existing programs where the victims should be mobilized and could be mobilized, and we should create a media strategy. So we can both proactively and reactively engage in the media in the case of new attacks, for instance. Last but not least, we should establish modalities that are necessary for the participation of the victims, such as psychological support, family counseling, but also compensation. We should not forget that victims, their lives have been totally uprooted, and involving in such a counter terrorist effort could be an enormous help in getting back on their feet again after what happened. During the project in Indonesia, which will last for a year, we will implement also a pilot project of which we will take the lessons learned and implement them and include them into the blueprint that we intend to write. That is what we are going to do in Indonesia. But finally, I would like to take this opportunity to call upon all of you, the member states and the international organizations, civil society organizations represented here, to actively recognize and embrace the potential that involving victims in the counter-terrorism fight could bring as believable counter narratives against the narratives of the terrorists. We at the ICCT The Hague are more than willing to update you on our efforts and progress and assist you if you would like to explore setting up structures to support victims as well. Thank you very much.